I'm so tired of people saying that it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, it's just a TV show. Whatever. No, it's not. Stories are the building blocks of our culture, of ourselves, even of our own psychology. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves about our own past and the experiences on a daily basis, but also the stories that we choose to spend time with. What types of values, our feelings, or whatever are they promoting? What types that we like to spend our time around? They're going to shape us. They're going to shape our personality and character, and they're going to shape our perception of the world and the acts and behaviors that we put out into the world. And people don't understand that. They go, it's just a movie. It's just this. I can like and promote whatever I want. Well, of course you can, but you should pay attention to the responsibility that you have.
Consume stories responsibly.
As a member of society, as a human being, responsibility to yourself.
Consider the consequences.
You need some balance. You need some certain criteria that is going to make sure you're promoting the right kind of works, or at least have thought through the type of work that this or that story is going to do in our culture, and then make your own decision whether or not that's something you want to support.
Consume stories responsibly. Consider the consequences. Consume stories responsibly.
Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel. And welcome to another Office Hours. I should have put that in the title. I forgot to put that in there. But Office Hours. Looks like my camera's a little unfocused there. See if that helps anything. It's an old Logitech camera. Sometimes it goes out of focus when I get up and sit back down and everything like that. Or it could be the connection, but I think we're good. Welcome to everyone who's here. Let's see. I believe first was Ghost Planet Inc. Good to see you there, both of you. Dr. Y, Alec Purdue, great to see you. Nathaniel Zalozball, Andre Hernandez, Studio Super, great to see you. Thanks, appreciate that. Final Fantasy fan, Private Eye, in Retrospectiva, Spidey Rules, Lindea. Good to see everybody here. Mike Pine. So we've got more people coming in. We'll be able to just welcome forever, but this camera's bugging me. Let me try and get this fixed here for a very close-up shot of my hand. There we go. That's better. Okay. Yeah, the camera, it's a low-end Logitech webcam. It does pretty well when I start it up. It's an instant focus. Much better now. Much better. But if I get up and walk away and come back and sit down, sometimes it gets a little fuzzy. I had this thought too. This kind of plays into some of the stuff I'm talking about today. I was going to talk about later how, YouTube is gone are the days when YouTube was about anybody being able to speak up, anybody being able to make their channel and put their voice out there, have a voice. Now, you can still do that for sure, but YouTube's only going to show you the people who cater to the algorithm, who pretty much made a business out of their YouTube channel. And not that there's anything wrong with making money. I mean, I'm monetized. I get a pittance here and there, but to the point where they rely on that income, so they get a little insincere, I think, in the topics, but they also start really polishing it, and they've got very super professional cameras and lighting, and got to go to their B-roll and got to this and that. I hate B-rolls. Oh my gosh, do I hate YouTube B-rolls. I love watching Professor of Rock videos when he interviews a lot of rock stars and whatnot, but it's gotten to the point now where immediately, as soon as I click on a video, I just scroll into like a minute and 30 seconds because that's when the video actually starts. He's got to do his B-roll, and he's got to introduce and then he's got to ask you to subscribe, and then he's got to just just shut up. Anyway, nothing is intrinsically wrong about doing any of that, but I thought, I really am happy that I have and I've done this on purpose. I mean, I'm not a technical guy when it comes to video, software and lighting and all that kind of stuff like that. So I'd have to learn, but I've kind of purposefully not. Every now and then somebody will contact me like, I'd really like to help you with your logos. Can I help you with your this or that? No, because I like the fact that I look low tech. Not because they're, I mean, of course, it'd be great to look polished and professional, but the reason I like the fact that I look low tech is because I hope that translates to sincerity in terms of when I have something to talk about, I actually have something to talk about. I was talking to Sound Engraver today, and at first I was having some trouble coming up with a topic tonight. And I am trying to stream once a Saturday night right now because, hey, the super chats, the monetization where I cut out videos and whatnot, it helps right now as we're trying to save for our wedding. And, we're paying for it predominantly on our own. So it's a lot of money, darn family. It's all her fault. Her family wants to come. No, but it's a costly thing. So I thought, well, stream once a week and, whatever I make from that is great. It goes to the cost. But I didn't really have much on my mind to talk about it first. I found out something that I actually did want to talk about, which we'll get into in a moment. But I told Sound Engraver, I was like, I could easily just find out, okay, what's the top things in the news right now? Okay, well, we got to talk about Brie Larson and how she's tanking the Marvel. We got to talk about this, but I don't really care about any of that stuff. And that's what I think's insincere. You go around to some of the geek channels, and you can even tell when they make a video about the biggest headline, you can tell this person has nothing to say about that. Certainly nothing that the other 5 talking heads on YouTube haven't already said. They almost look it's like a chore to do it, but they got to get that algorithm, got to get that daily video out, got to talk about the biggest thing on the hashtag and whatnot. And it just comes off as insincere, because then those people, you never really know, are they really giving you an honest opinion about this new movie that came out, or are they playing it safe and jumping on a bandwagon? I don't do that. I am straight up burned in effigy for daring to tell you that the Joker movie's garbage and you shouldn't support it. I mean, people just unsubscribe. I mean, left and right. So I have no qualms about going against the grain or giving you my sincere opinions. And you guys agree with some of them, and some of them you think I'm full of bull hockey or whatever. But whatever. At least I'm speaking sincerely. Actually what I think. And I do know of a lot of channels. I'm not saying every other channel does this, but it just used to be the days where somebody would just grab a webcam and just start talking. I don't really watch his channel anymore, not because I'm against him or anything, but just because I don't really have time to watch that kind of stuff anymore. But Diversity in Comics, he's kind of famous for this. He started up with just like a cell phone showing you his lap and the comic book he just bought, and that was it. And he found an audience because he was being sincere, in his opinions. You disagree with him, agree with him, whatever. He was being sincere. I don't know what he's doing now, but that kind of thing. That's where you get started. But and there's nothing wrong with growing and developing, some knowledge about software and whatnot. That's fine, as long as you can just still be sincere. But so I like the fact that I'm just kind of low tech. I like the fact that I have to put my thumb on the camera to get it to focus or whatever. What you're getting is my own real opinions and something I actually feel like talking about, not just what I think I need to cover to make sure we got the algorithms and the hashtags and all that crossed off so I can get my YouTube payment. So anyway, hope you guys are doing okay, and his own follow that well. Just checking into the chat here. Got the Sentinel Art Table Talk. Don't know if I recognize you, but welcome, Schooner Tuna. So good to see everybody there. Mark Baker, Leah Plus Size, welcome. So my topic for tonight, and I don't know how long it'll take us, but my mantra on the channel is consume stories responsibly. I always play that little video. It's my channel teaser, and I try to play that before all of my live streams, at least recently. And as I say in the video, it's important to consume stories responsibly. So let's cover that first, why. Then I want to talk about how, in terms of the specifics. Because there's more to it than just avoiding the bad stuff, But why is it important? First of all, if you're somebody here live or watching this on a replay, a lot of people are going to resist this idea. And if you're one of those people who's like, what, I can watch whatever I want to watch. It affects me if I want it to affect me. And no, I just watch whatever I like, whenever I want, whenever I feel like it. And how dare you tell me that I can't, this isn't the video for you. It's probably not the channel for you either, quite honestly, if that's you, because that's just, it's such a toddler-like response, to be honest. You wouldn't say that about food, right? As much as we like imbibe, as much as Prof loves his pizza, you know, you do have to think about, okay, what are these things I'm putting in my body that is going to affect my health, my physical health? I need to I need to make sure I get some vegetables. I need to make sure I've got some potassium because it's summer and I'm going to sweat a lot. Want those leg cramps or whatever. Old people stuff. But you do have to think and put some sort of thought in and some sort of level of discernment into what you eat and what you put into your body because it's going to affect you health wise. It's the same thing, guys, for stories in a psychological way. We Our psychologies are built around stories. As I say in that preview a little bit, that we are the products of the stories we tell ourselves. We think of our own and we make sense of our own history and our own kind of progress to where we are right now. We make sense of the things that have happened to us by looking at ourself as the main character in our story. That's just how the human psychology works. We we understand things in the level of stories. We think back to like relationships that you've had, friendships you've had, and whatnot, and you think of those as a story, a beginning, middle, and end, even if it's an end. And you think about that, and you make sense. Okay, and there's some trials that happened in your past or whatever, and you want to try to incorporate what you learned, from that into building a better future or watching out for this or whatever. We're very much story based in our psychology, and this isn't just my opinion. Psychologists will tell you this absolutely. And if we're so story based, if everything we think about ourselves and about the world around us is built on the stories that we're told or that we tell ourselves, true or false, whatever, doesn't matter. We're built on those. If that's how much our psychology is built up, how can you think that the fictional stories you choose to spend your time with aren't going to affect you? How can you possibly be that naive to think that they're not going to affect you? Or how can you think that it's not going to affect a society? Because what affects individuals affects society. That's how that works. And stories have always been the pulse of how a culture is doing. You can go back and look at ancient Greece and look at their mythologies, and you can tell their values, their fears, their aspirations. You can tell a lot about a culture from its stories that it tells. Even the difference with that being sort of religious stories back in the day, but also just fiction stories today that we know are fiction, but that we tend to celebrate or spend our time with. Andre Hernandez, thank you very much for the $2 super chat. Said, here's some money for your wedding, Professor. Appreciate that, Andre. That's awesome. Every little bit helps, man. Believe me. We just dropped the deposit for the caterer, and it's like, well, there goes the savings account right now for a moment. So yeah, no, much appreciated. So there's two aspects to what it means to consume good stories. There's two aspects to what it means to consume good stories. One is how well a story is constructed. So just, whether or not you're consuming well-made stories or well-told stories, well-constructed stories. And then there's the aspect of, is that story, whether or not it's well-constructed or not, good for your psyche and good for society, right? If you were someone prone to, psychologists will tell you this too, if you're someone prone to depression, if you're someone who's actually kind of prone to this sort of hopeless mindset, don't watch a bunch of nihilistic films or shows, even if they're very well done. And there are some very well done sort of nihilistic shows or tragedies. They'll tell you go watch some comedies or at least some uplifting things. And that's why I kind of think it is a little ironic. I'm not even trying to be funny about it, but it is a little ironic that the Snyder Con or whatever is going to support mental health and suicide prevention, which I think is great. Any money that you can raise for that is wonderful. It's a wonderful cause, but it is kind of ironic that they're using his films for that. I mean, his films will make you depressed. His films are all about questioning the things you thought were good or worth fighting for or anything like that. I mean, that's his like foundation for making art ever. It's kind of ironic, Matthew Flynn, the Gladiator of Kaun. Nice new name there. Oh, hey, €5. Or is that £5? That's £5, right? Just disappeared from my bank account. I wonder where they went. Well, thank you, sir. Very much appreciated. They went to the Pruff Engraver Wedding. Professor Geek Sound Engraver. How does that sound for a name for us? We've been talking about that. Was, like Benifer when Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez were, together. Those kinds of joint names. I thought Pruff Engraver is probably about the best we could come up with, but I don't know. Just a thought. So you have these two aspects. Let's talk about the first aspect first. Why is it important to surround yourself with well-told quality stories? It doesn't mean that you can never watch anything but Shakespeare, in terms of quality. No. Of course, we all have our guilty pleasures. There's a sort of a spectrum of how well told something is. For example, I've been watching Naruto, and I like the basic story setup, and I like where we're going. I haven't reached the end yet, but I like where the arc's going. But you guys know who watched the whole thing. There's a whole lot of fillers, which are just like, wow, these are bad. So I have them on kind of in the background sometime if I'm doing something else, just so that I'm not. I kind of know what's going on in case there's anything necessary, but I'm not really, spending my time watching nothing but, maybe a poorly or just sort of a fluff kind of story, because I know it's going somewhere. I know the story arc is going to pick back up in a certain episode or whatever, So it's not that you can only surround yourself by well-crafted, top of the line artistic stories all the time, but you do have to keep it in mind. And just as you would mind what you ate, and say, okay, I've had a lot of sugar today. Maybe I should lay off the sugar, or, I had a lot of protein. Maybe I need to get little vitamins in me or whatever, just as you would do that, or you should do that about your diet, you need to do the same thing with stories. If you've been imbibing a bit much into the guilty pleasures and you're just like, you know what, I need something really well crafted right now. I need either a good, solid, well done film or book or whatever. And here's why. Because just like we think in stories, a well-told story helps us to better think about our own life in well-told stories. Well, just for example, a well-done story has a character go through something and actually grow. There should be some character progression in a well-told story. And this is very bare bones, just for the sake of a example here. But you should have some character progression. If something really tragic happens to a character, they don't just walk on the next scene not changed by it in any way. I mean, that's good storytelling. You have a character arc, you have a character progression. They change. They're not the same person they were at the end as they were in the beginning. And it should be believable change. And it should be things that you actually see happening to them in a gradual integrated shift, throughout the pacing of the tale. That's a well done story. If you surround yourself with that, then you try to think about your own life. And you do this subconsciously. You don't necessarily watch a movie and say, now, how can I think about my life according to this? No, but it does train you. Watching stories and the kinds of stories you watch will train your understanding of story. So then whenever you do just happen to think about things that happen to you, or you try to process something you've gone through for good or bad, you will look at your own story based on the training you've had by watching other stories. So if you've spent a lot of time watching stories with good character progression, then you can look at your own story in your life and you'll just automatically think, how am I going to learn from that? How can I progress from there? How can I, do that? Rather than if you just watched a bunch of stuff where things happen and don't affect, the characters at all, or it's just poorly done and the characters don't progress very well. It's poorly done arcs and whatnot. Then you probably won't hold yourself up to those standards, or maybe you'll get trapped, in those situations that you've gone through or whatever, instead of really processing them and moving on. And I'm focusing on that for right now, but it's also certainly the same thing for the types of stories that you hear, hearing about somebody else's story, parsing out whether or not somebody's lying to you, whether or not the media is telling you the truth about something. You understand the basis of stories and you understand how things are, because again, stories don't have to be just fictional. When it comes to the real world, I mean, even your religious beliefs or lack thereof is a story that you tell yourself. And you certainly would believe something like that's true, whatever you believe about, faith or again, lack thereof. So you're trained by the stories you spend your time with. So it is important to spend some time with some well-crafted stories. This is one thing I have to think about a lot, because I do like a lot of geeky stuff. And like if I'm watching, some anime or whatever, And if even if I'm purposefully slogging through some bad apps before I can get to the good stuff or whatever, I have to make sure that I'm not just gonna. I'll feel my head in a fog. I really will. If I've just done nothing but watch or read poorly constructed stories, even if they're not like horrible stories, there was something redeeming in them. There was something good to kind of hang on to or whatever. Even if they're like that, if I spend too much time with those kinds of stories, I'll start to feel in a fog a bit. I'll certainly feel in a fog creatively because I'm not really being refreshed and inspired that way. But you also feel in a fog because you can't quite focus. Maybe you've been there, or maybe you've been here for so long that you don't even know it's the reason why. But writing is thinking. I was talking to Sound Agree about this too today with the I think Fan Man talked about this on his Second Cup Cafe this morning, the idea about like AI writing programs and whatnot. And I was telling Sound Engraver, if it gets to that point where my students are just turning in generated AI generated papers, first of all, I'll know because they'll actually be good. They'll actually be grammatically correct. I'll be like, wow, you totally didn't write this because the nature of writers today, not all my students, I have some wonderful students who are really quite, either really accomplished or trying to be. But for the most part, writers today just can't, especially young people, they have no idea how to express themselves through writing, and writing is thinking. So if you don't know how to, even if it's an enforced assignment about a topic that you don't care about, if you don't know how to think your way through that, and writing forces you to think your way through that in order, because you have to think one thought at a time and write it down, and you have to process that idea well before you move on to the next one. And if you're going to write and draft and revise, you have to transition to the next topic. Writing and doing it well and trying to write well forces you to think coherently and think well through things. And that's becoming a lost art. Writing is, and people don't realize that your thinking is going to suffer as well. And we see that all around us. So that's when it comes to actual writing. But in consuming somebody else's writing, if you're not consuming well-constructed writing and you're not being presented with ideas, whether they're in the context of a fictional story, still ideas that they're presenting you with, that have to do with the plot and whatnot. If that's not ordered and well done, then you are again sort of training yourself to not think properly, to not think in order, not really think in a coherent way, because you're just being fed this mishmash of incoherent whatever. And you can feel you can feel it if you pay attention. If you are somebody who just watches, let's say that you're kind of a guilty pleasure is you like sort of B sci-fi movies. I love a good B sci-fi movie. Not saying anything wrong with that. But if you did nothing but watch those, then you would just kind of be used to not having to worry about good, good theme, good integration of plot, good logical conclusions, and good, usage of characters and so forth. You would just kind of be used to that. You'd get numbed to it, So, and then that would follow over. If you are a creative person, whether you're a storyteller or a writer or artist or whatever, musician or whatever, that'll affect you. That'll affect you. You need to be consuming good nutrition, good psychological or artistic nutrition in order to put out good art. That's the way that works. It's not, you're not just some omnipotent psyche and that you can watch whatever you want and nothing's going to affect you unless you want it to affect you. You're not Superman. You're not God. You're a human being with a human psychology. And human psychologies are affected by the stories that we tell ourselves, that we spend our time around. It's an important thing to consider. I did just see this comment there in the chat that Leia Plus Size says, when I feel down, I look to my aspirational hero stories to inspire me, bring me up, not stay down. Exactly. And that's one of the things I talk about. That's why we have aspirational hero stories. I mean, there's just so many great, stories that you just can't help but to smile and be picked up by, even if you're feeling down. And maybe that story, maybe that movie or comic book or whatever doesn't solve your problem for you. Maybe it doesn't tell you exactly what you need to do, but at the very least, it can kind of restore some faith in you. You can have some faith that there is going to be a way out of this, that it's worth trying. It's worth, attempting to do the right thing. There's some immediate sense of pride and in a good way, pride, immediate sense of relief, even that, at least I'm taking the high road here. At least I'm doing this or whatever, So So yeah, stories are incredibly important in aspirational stories and aspirational heroes and archetypes. That's why I argue so much for them. So that's the one side of it, where we need well told, well constructed stories. Then, and here's where I lose a lot of people. Then you have to think about, is this story, let's say it's a well crafted story, is it good for me? And is it good for society? To some degree, there's room for disagreement, right? Because you can only go based on your understanding. But I think it's a very, it's just a truth. And we need to assert it and move beyond it, that people don't actually spend time thinking about that. They don't. They decide, well, I like it. I want to watch it. I want to read it. I like it. It's fun. All the cool kids are saying it's fun and it's good. So I want to be kind of thought of as one of the cool kids, which is, adults think this. It sounds like childlike psychology, but oh my gosh, look at YouTube. Look at the little bandwagons. It's very much in play. So they're not really spending time reasonably thinking through, is that story good for me or good for society? And this is where I get into things I've been talking about before, like all of these garbage stories that the media is putting out with the ideologies in them, and they're trying to deconstruct things and change culture. I mean, how many people just straight up hate watched Rings of Power? What is your damage? I mean, why would you spend time? Oh, I gotta watch it so I can know how horrible it is, and I can know what the people are talking about when I go on YouTube and hear them like, yeah, yeah. Or you'll have YouTubers, no, I'm watching it, guys, so you don't have to. I'm watching because I'm reviewing it. I'm telling you what. You know that it's bad. Everyone knew that it was going to be bad before it even aired. You don't need to watch it just to tell us how bad it is. You don't need to, slice your arm open just to tell us that it's a bad thing to do and that other people should avoid it. I mean, no. And what does that do to you? Even if you're watching something for some sort of constructed, noble goal that you have in mind for yourself, it's affecting you. Is it possible to watch something in a guarded way for a limited amount of time to kind of dissect it and present it as a bad example? Sure, but that's not what people do. People binge on this garbage. People talk themselves into needing to see whatever garbage film is going to come out. They'll know it's bad, but I got to see it because I love a good train wreck. What does that say about you? You need stories that are going to be well crafted, and even if they're well crafted, you need them to balance you out. So sometimes it's not even a matter of, is this story objectively bad for society on a whole? Is it bad for you? Like I was saying, if you're someone who's feeling down, if you're dealing with depression, and there's an amazing movie out, really well done, but it kind of questions everything and really, drives you into the ground at the end. And maybe for some people that's an okay thing. It provides a certain amount of catharsis. But for you, maybe seriously, you should steer clear of that. That's something to consider. And it's not just the context of, if you're depressed, don't watch sad movies. That's just the example I'm giving. Do you struggle with something that's sort of an addiction or a vice or something like that you want to get over, right? Maybe don't watch movies that deal with that, or present a lot of that. If you, there's just a number of examples. So it can just apply to you, even if it's not society wide, but it's certainly true for society. And where I really get in trouble with people, and I don't care, I'm going to continue shouting it from the rooftops. Archetypes are important. Archetypes should be maintained because archetypes are what we build our society and our culture on. And what I mean by that is we build, when I say culture or society, I mean archetypes help us to express to ourselves and pass on to future generations the things which we think are taboo, the things which we think are to be valued, personality traits that you should aspire to and try to cultivate. Archetypes really are the way that stories show that forth. And we're seeing just a massive push now to deconstruct archetypes. And it's either from somebody like a progressive ideologue standpoint, where they're actively trying to deconstruct your culture, forget the past, kill it if you have to. That's their mantra. not just a quote from Star Wars. They really truly do want to annihilate all of your preconceived notions so that they can replace them. They don't want you to even have a concept of what it is to be manly or masculine or feminine or womanly. No, ignore. We need you to forget all about that so that we can replace that in your mind with our fantasy world of gender deconstruction, blobbity blobbity. They want to actively do that. So you should, even if I think it might be fun. I mean, they might have some good parts in the movie, though. Is your support of this movie going to allow that platform, going to, let that platform to get out there and do some sort of harm to the world or to society in some way or another? And these are questions you have to ask yourself. I can certainly make my channel and shout about, what I think you should do and don't do, but I'm not you. People get so mad at me. How dare you say this? I'm a box on your computer screen. You can get rid of me like that. People act like I'm at their house with a gun to their head saying, don't you watch that. Make sure you watch that. I've got no control over you, but I can tell you what I think and draw your attention to some really important points. And people don't like that because they get mad that I might convince other people not to jump on the little bandwagon with them. I ruin their little parties. That's why they get really mad at me. I mean, I'm serious. When I came out and said the Joker movie is bad for society, it's a bad film. That's not the Joker. It's deconstructing his archetype as an elemental villain. Oh, people just they couldn't stand it. Their head exploded. They got so many ways to try to defend this. Well, you shouldn't even think about it as a Joker. It's just a good movie. And why did they really want to do that? Why did they boil down to that? Because bandwagoning. Not only were their favorite talking heads on YouTube saying, yeah, this movie's great, but also the woke crowd, on Twitter and whatnot, had a lot of problems with the movie. So, well, if the bad guys don't like it, then it must be good. It wasn't really about the movie. The movie was honestly not even all that well done. And I've read the synopsis of it. Maybe visually it's wonderful because I didn't watch it, so I really can't speak to that. But kind of predictable. He didn't even really want to make a Joker movie. He had this movie in mind. They slapped a Joker sticker on it so that it could be marketable. And people said, well, just don't think about it as the Joker. Well, what are you going to do now? They're making a sequel. And I was saying that this is going to be the new story of the Joker that's going to invade people's psyches, so that when younger generations think of the Joker, they're going to think about this poor guy who was mistreated and made horrible decisions. The movie says he makes horrible decisions. The movie doesn't let him off the hook. No, but the movie invites you into him as a protagonist. And anytime a protagonist is there in the story doesn't work unless you're empathizing with the protagonist in some way. You have to invest in the protagonist for the story to work. So I don't care how many people say, no, it doesn't. It doesn't justify anything he does. It's inviting you to invest in the protagonist. And when the protagonist is deplorable, it's inviting you to empathize and to kind of understand. And what's so wrong with empathizing or understanding with villains? Nothing. That's an empathetic villain. That's a separate archetype, and we need those. But if you it's just like taking the aspirational heroes and trying to muddy them up and deconstruct them down into a cathartic motivational hero. There's nothing wrong with cathartic motivational heroes, but we have a precious few aspirational heroes. And if you start deconstructing all of them, we lose them, and we lose the desperately important function that they fulfill in our society. Same thing's true with villains. If you take away the precious few elementally evil villains we have, are the ones that are just evil. They don't need a backstory. They're just this force of evil. They do bad things to show you that bad things are in the world, and there won't always be reasons for them. You won't always be able to understand why these horrible things happen to you or why people do horrible things. You can't always go find a reason and go find a way to understand them and this and that. Sometimes it's just evil. We need elemental villains to teach us that. And the Joker's always been one of the precious few elemental villains we have left. And here we go. We got to deconstruct him. And that's not really done from any kind of ideological standpoint. I think sometimes it's just due from, boredom or lack of understanding of archetypes, or thinking that, this will be so new and fresh. People think that. People think that if they take the approach that's done to 90% of characters out there, and they find like the 2 or 3 characters who aren't treated like that, who are the characters who resist that, well, if we apply the basic common treatment to those characters, now we're doing something new and innovative. No, you're not. You're doing the same old crap thing that everybody does. You're just finding the few precious holdouts of characters that resisted that, and you're applying the same old crap to them. There's nothing innovative about the Joker or Man of Steel or any of that. It's it's taking an archetype that was important and or a character that embodied an archetype that was important, and it's just marking that one off the list. One more gone, so we can chip away the rest of them and stop the way you think about this. That's the danger of it. I see a couple super chats. Before I go any farther, I don't want to miss these, so let me go back. First one I missed, I think, was another Matthew Flynn. Speaking of Greek myth, do you have a favorite tale and its meaning? Oh, that's hard to ask me to pick the favorite Greek myth. That's really hard. I do like the story of Perseus. I can't say that's my favorite because I love a lot of them, but immediately springs to mind Perseus and how he's helped by certain gods and goddesses to rescue. Who does he rescue? He rescues Andromeda, right? I get these two, Andromeda and then Hermione's their daughter, or does he rescue Hermione and Andromeda's her daughter? I get those two mixed up. But I like his story, slaying the Gorgon and everything like that. There's also I'm blanking on the name. The guy who rides Pegasus in the myth, not Hercules in the popular stories, but the guy who rides Pegasus, Belleron, I think it's Belleron. Good stories. Mike Pine, thank you very much. Said, Prof, any chance on watching the Gamera anime? I did not even know that was a thing. Is that new? I'm not a big kaiju aficionado. I like the recent films they did. Godzilla, all those movies. It was like 4 of them or something. Kong, and then Kong versus Godzilla, and all. I like those movies a lot, and I've liked King Kong movies, that I've seen growing up, but not a major kaiju fan. Not a value judgment on it. It just never really appealed to me. I mean, I like playing Rampage growing up, the video game, like any other boy would. But yeah, I don't get that immediate excitement when it comes to monster movies. So maybe one day, I don't know, maybe. I know Gamera is the turtle. I know that, Dr. White, just because Al loves Gamera, or Gamera. I don't know if I'm playing the name right. He loves that character. It's like his favorite. And I know it's not technically in the Godzilla universe, but it should be, or they want it to be. I don't know. Yeah, I just, it's not really my thing. So I do have limited time to watch stuff, which is why I can say I probably won't watch it, certainly anytime soon, but I can't say the never. I mean, if it's a good, well done story and I ever get around to it, or something happens and I develop the interest in it, you say upcoming 5 episodes and Netflix anime. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Who knows? It's kind of hard to believe Netflix would do anything good, but maybe. I've never heard anything about it. So I'm speaking of total ignorance there about that series. I haven't really followed it. So thanks for letting me know about it though. I appreciate that. So where was I here? You have to think about, is the movie good for you and is it good for society? You have to consider balance in your intake of stories. Are you spending too much time watching this and this kind of stuff, and you need to get some more well-constructed stories. As much as I love comic books, and I'll read comics right now, I'm trying to read through all of the Witcher comics because they're so good. I like them better than the novels, to be honest. I love the first 2 Witcher novels, the collections of short stories. Once he really gets into the major plot, he kind of loses some of the appeal. Like that 3rd book, the first actual novel, not just collection of short stories, you don't even get Geralt's perspective at all. You're in Ciri or Triss, or it's not interesting to me anymore. And he kind of loses the plot, and he goes in more toward of a direction and ending with those novels that I don't think is very good. Sort of Destiny, the one he wrote at the very end that goes back and takes place sometime earlier. That's quite good. But I've been reading the comics because they kind of take more of their cue from the games in terms of continuity, and they're good stories, really well done stories. But I need to realize that if all I'm doing is reading comic books, then that's a muscle that I'm not flexing. I'm leaving just reading prose, because your brain reacts differently to prose reading than it does to comic reading. It's important. It is so important, and I know it's so hard. It's so hard for people just to carve out a half hour of your day, even 15 minutes of your day, and just sit down and read something prose. That's vital, both fiction and nonfiction. It's vital because, like I said, your brain does more of the work when you're reading prose. You're creating the images yourself. You're engaging with the text in a way that you won't really engage with if it's just comics. Although even comics, you're engaging with it in a way more so than if you're just watching a show or a movie. And that brings me to my last point. But before I get there, I will say that there are a lot of other ways, for stories. For instance, audiobooks. There's no shame in listening to a good audiobook. Um, I listen to a lot of audiobooks for the sake of time. I drive a lot, commuting for different things. And if I know that my time, like a lot of my free time right now, I've been doing some really intense Bible study, and that takes up time doing that I have to do kind of hands-on, that I wouldn't be able just to sit and read a novel for the moment. So I will listen to some, novels or things like that, just so I can keep good fiction stories going through my head. But you can't over rely on that. Now, I'll tell my students, start out with audiobooks, because I try teaching a literature class in today's society. And I teach a literature class that's one that it fulfills a requirement that students have to take, and they flock to mine because it's about hero stories. They're like, oh, that'll be easier. But I'm making them read, The Last of the Mohicans by James Fenimore Cooper, and then this, uh, I'll watch the movie, which is nothing like the novel. So I tell them, like, use audiobooks if that helps you. I know that your flea level attention spans haven't been developed because all you've been doing is watching social media all your life, and you haven't really spent time. Reading comprehension is hard. It's like going and working out. It really is, especially today in our society, which the things you encounter daily around you, because of our technology, aren't, it's like the junk food. It's not giving your brain and reading comprehension any kind of workout or regular exercise. You have to go and force yourself to get that exercise. Make your reading comprehension grow. It's not something, you're not stupid if you can't. You're just somebody who's not paying attention to flexing that muscle. And it's going to come easier to some people than others, sure. So, audiobooks are great if they help, but don't over rely on them. Now, the other point that I was going to get to, and then if you guys have any other points or things you want to talk about here, we can do that. But you need to practice active reading or active viewing if you're talking about a movie. We need to get away from this idea that it's just entertainment. It's just, you just sit down, let it wash all over you, just open wide and accept everything that it throws at you, and then just decide if you liked it or not. That's like baby level. That's the most, the littlest child can do that, right? You want to start actively thinking about the stories that you're partaking of in terms of analysis. And it doesn't mean taking the fun out of it. Sometimes your brain power just might not be there. You're just kind of, listening to something, but you can think about it afterwards. It's necessary to be able to discern whether something is well told or not. It's necessary to be able to discern whether something is good for you or good for society or not in terms of a story. You need to practice that. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to take some sort of classes. I mean, I've had a lot of film classes. I'm also a literature professor, so obviously I know how to analyze film or literature and whatnot, but you don't have to have that training. You can just practice it. You look for things in a story that, whether it's a book or a movie or a comic or whatever, or a television show, you look for things, if you want to think on the archetype level, with like my archetype videos and whatnot, you can try and think, what are certain character types? If it's an author or a director that you've seen some other of their work, think about the types of characters, that they have in their movies or whatever. It'll kind of help you understand, the new way that they're presenting their kind of, staple cast of characters or something, or themes. You look for things that repeat. Look for patterns. If it's a movie, look for visual patterns. Look for colors that are used, certain ways, over and over again. You look for things that repeat. And then you start, even if you don't quite know what they mean, you just kind of take mental note. You make some observations. If something happens that's really unusual and you don't quite understand what it means, make note of it, because it's probably important, and you can probably link it together with something later. And when you got all these observations, even if, I tell my students when I teach them to actually analyze film, I say, as you're watching it, keep a notepad with you and just make note of things that you see repeating. Make note of anything that stands out to you as odd. Make note of anything that you really like, just visuals like symbols, camera angles, colors, character mannerisms, actor mannerisms, just make note of all that stuff. And then when you're done with it, even if you don't know what to do with that list of observations, you can start to make connections. You can say, okay, which of these observations kind of go together? And you see that, oh, well, that one character tends to wear that one color or does that one mannerism. I mean, that kind of coincides with the other character who does that. You start to make connections, and that's what analysis is. And you can do that on some level just mentally, but that's a way of practicing active reading or active viewing. And our culture is so 100% um, not conducive to that. It doesn't teach us to do that. Now, again, there's something to be said for you're just tired at the end of the day. You just want to throw on your favorite TV show or whatever and relax. Sure, but that should be the exception, not the norm. For your story viewing or story reading or whatever. You need to practice good viewing. Active viewing or active reading. Flex that brain, flex that analytical muscle a little bit, and that'll help you decide is it constructive. Because you might watch a movie and think, I'm not satisfied with the end. I mean, I liked a lot of stuff, and I like the characters, and I like the director, but I'm just not satisfied. Well, if you start to really learn about films, then you'll learn, oh, it's because the character arc wasn't fully realized in the end, or because the tension, the pacing, it lost all tension in the end, and that's what left you unsatisfied. It was a quick flash in the pan ending when you'd been really investing in a story. You'll start to pick up on that kind of stuff. Why is it like that? So it's important to cultivate and train your analytical muscles there. Let me check on the super chats, just make sure I haven't missed any. I see one there, but let me just double check, backtrack. Yes, I did miss one here by Andre Hernandez. Have you ever read Aragon, Inheritance Cycle? It's like Star Wars with dragons. I haven't read that yet, but it's absolutely on my list. I've heard good things and bad things. I actually first heard about, I think I'd seen like Aragon, the movie, and I've seen it in bookstores and whatnot. And I always thought, okay, something fantasy, maybe I'd like it or whatever. But I actually heard, I think it was Raymond Arroyo. He's this Catholic news media guy who the authors were Catholic, and they were like putting a lot of their own morals and whatnot into the books, and built not unorganic, organically building it up from scratch. And that kind of piqued my interest more into it. So I would like to pick to start it someday and just see if I like it. But thanks for reminding me about it and bringing it to my mind there. I appreciate it. And then also a $5 super chat from Alec Purdue. You guys want us to get married or something? Thank you for the super chats. Appreciate them. Says this is precisely why I have really come to appreciate Mamoru. Let me get this right. Mamoru Hosada's films. He uses a lot of symbolism that makes for great analysis. I see you mean. Yeah. Was he the guy that did The Beast and the Boy? I don't know his name, so I don't know if. But I know that you turned me on to that movie, The Beast and His Boy, which was quite good. That was quite good. Listen, we're watching that. The other thing that you should cultivate, you need to practice, train yourself, train your analytical skills, train yourself to be a active viewer. Start thinking about your own story intake, just like you would think about your caloric intake or something like that. On some level, and even at the most basic level, I've been watching a lot of these kind of movies lately. Let me make sure I've got something hopeful, or let me make sure or if you're watching nothing but happy endings, maybe you're missing out on some good catharsis. If something's a little tragic, maybe that might be good for you too, in a way. Not nihilistic necessarily, but dramatic and whatnot. The other thing you need to cultivate, and people are going to get mad when I say this, but hear me out. You have to cultivate your taste. You have to cultivate your taste in things. And people get so mad because, no, I want a pat on the head and vindication for whatever I want to like, Now, some of it is just sort of an innate thing, right? That you're not going to change. When I say cultivate taste, I don't necessarily mean, like, I would never anime is bad, so cultivate your taste away from anime. No, I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm talking about, I'm trying to think of an example I haven't used. Well, let's say like the Snyder Bros, the Snyder films. Those movies are horrible. They're horribly made. They're horribly directed. The stories make no sense. So why do so many people defend them and flock to them? Because they like Snyder's aesthetic. Snyder has a very specific visual aesthetic. And if that appeals to you, okay, that's just something that appeals to you. You can't change that. If you like the darker, sort of cinematic visual, apocalyptic, visuals and landscape, that's your thing, whatever, fine. But you would have to cultivate your taste to the point where that alone doesn't determine whether or not you're going to support something. Because if something, like in Snyder's case, is just, let's say it's visually stunning to you, you're really into that kind of thing, visually stunning. And let's say some of the themes he tries to put in there, are really of interest to you. That's fine. But be smart enough and have enough self-control to realize that that's not quite enough. It's kind of like supporting and really trying to go out and drum up support for this comic book because it's so beautifully drawn. The art is just so amazing, but the story is horrible. The story goes nowhere. It's poorly constructed, or maybe it really deconstructs these characters. Like, what was that? The crossover, or it was the event that Tom King wrote for DC. I forget the name of it, but where they had like the psych ward for superheroes, and there was a murder there, and Poison Ivy was in the psych ward. It happened when they just butchered and killed Rebirth, and Tom King showed his ridiculous insanity about Batman, whatever. They got him to write this crossover. You guys will remember what it is. It's called something, I forget. I'm also blanking right now because it's late. The artist who was involved, Heroes in Crisis. Thank you. Yeah, I was looking at the chat. David got that there. Yeah, thank you. Heroes in Crisis was the crossover. Horrible deconstruction of these characters, doing things that shouldn't be in these characters' worlds. Whereas some cool ideas, sure, if they were executed in a better fashion. And I'm forgetting the guy who did the art, but it was gorgeous art. I mean, really amazing art. Really just well done, high quality. It was nice art. I remember thumbing through it in the comic store thinking, wow, that looks really, really good. I won't give a single dollar to it, though, because I know what it's doing. I know the story. I think I bought the first issue or something, maybe to review. Or maybe I didn't. I don't know. If I did, I certainly got rid of it because I don't have it now. But it's just, no, you don't support that. You don't go out there and just because you might like, an idea in it or a visual in it or something like that. You do want to make sure you're cultivating your taste. And that's for the sake of quality effects on you, right? Because you would have to cultivate. Let's say that if your physical taste for food, if your palate is such that, like, look, I love my fast food too, guys. I love some a good bacon cheeseburger from Burger King or whatever. But if your taste is such that that's just what you go to all the time, and you really can't handle anything like a salad or anything like a grilled vegetable or something like that, then you have to work on your taste, because if you can't handle anything but fast food, then your body's going to suffer for it. The same thing with story. If your taste is such where you need these aspects and you don't care about anything else and you can't handle anything else, then your psyche's going to suffer for that. So you do have to cultivate, along with cultivating your analytical skills and flexing those and training yourself and training yourself to think about balance in terms of the stories you consume and whatnot. You also have to cultivate your taste a little bit. It doesn't mean being denying who you are, denying anything that you like, or denying anything innate about your own physical taste or personal taste or whatever. But it does mean not being ruled by it. It does mean understanding that maybe there are other factors that should play into a story, not just what you happen to like about it. I think, and I've said this before, that Superman Returns is an incredibly well-told story. It's well-directed. It's well-written. There are some wonderful moments. There's some wonderful straight-up Superman moments in it. It's great. And I'll still watch it at times because of that. But I will never stand up and say, that's a great Superman movie, guys. You don't know what you're talking about. That's a great Superman. Never, because the film makes Superman do things that he should never ever do. It tries to tell a certain story that just should never be told about Superman. It goes places that are totally wrong for the character. So just because I might like the construction of the story, just objectively, and I might really love, some of the themes, and I might really love places where it did get Superman right, I'll never be able to stand up and say, that's a good movie, guys. You don't know what you're talking about. It's a good Superman movie. No, because it's not a good Superman movie. Um, in hindsight, it's a lot better than the crap we got after it. but that's another thing. People will say, well, at least that's not a justification for supporting something. When I talk about James Gunn and the horrible approach he's taking to these DC films, if people say, hey, at least it's going to be better than the Snyder stuff. No, what does that mean? At least a knife wound isn't quite as tragic as a gunshot to the head, but that doesn't mean you should go out and try to get a knife wound. I mean, that's just people, but people will try to hang on or try to grab onto anything that can justify them watching some of this stuff that they just want to imbibe. They just want to be part of the in crowd, and stuff. Got a couple more super chats here while I was prattling away. Let me make sure I got back to all of them. Studio Super, thank you very much, sir. $4.99 or madam, I don't know. You're not gendered in your name there. Part 1 of 2, folks on our side that watch what they know is garbage suddenly force themselves to get used to it, and in turn think their views evolved. Interesting. Okay, let me find your second part before I respond to that. For another $4.99, man, thank you so much. It devolved their views. It invalidates their past and future criticisms, for it can be rebutted with, "You'll get used to it. Let it happen." Yeah, that's a great. I'm glad you brought that up, because we've seen that garbage happen a lot. Two examples spring to mind. One of them is when Marvel did the. I can't even think of a word that's strong enough for the insanity, the wicked, the evil, straight up evil. I mean, straight up satanic evil thing that they did when they decided to make Captain America a Nazi. And Tom Brevoort was the editor behind that. He was also the editor behind other boneheaded moves like Spider-Man One More Day and all of that. And he was actually quoted. I think he was actually quoted saying it about the Spider-Man undoing the Mary Jane thing, marriage or whatever. But he said something similar with the Captain America. He said, "Your medicine might not taste well, but it's good for you. Take it." The audacity, the arrogance, the pompous, garbage human being that would say that. Hey, you guys love these characters. They're doing something for you. They're working for you in your psyche. Their stories are good for you. I'm going to come in and mess that up because I just think, it's interesting, and you'll be okay. You'll like it in the end. People were saying that about Snyder's movies when Man of Steel first came out, and that was the only movie that's out. Garbage, guys, give him a chance. He's showing you how Superman evolves, and no, you shouldn't have to do that. And then after Batman v Superman did the same crap. Guys, give it a chance. It's showing you. And then when Dawn of Justice was garbage, and they're like, well, see, it's because it wasn't Snyder's cut. And the Snyder comes out, and it still doesn't do anything. It's still garbage. So that evolve or devolve view, that's a good one. The other example I had, what was the other example that came to mind talking about evolve? Oh, yeah. It actually still has to do with the Snyder thing. That's why I got confused there for a second. A lot of people understood, Batman v Superman killed that DC franchise. It should have, Man of Steel really killed it, but Batman v Superman killed that franchise. There was sort of maybe a sort of curiosity about what they might do with a Justice League movie after that, but it just killed it. And people knew that. People understood it. And when Justice League came out, even with the shenanigans and getting Joss Whedon involved or whatever, people knew that was just a dead on arrival franchise. Well, then when the Snyder Cut rumblings started to happen, and people pretended that this is the fans have asked for it. The fans have asked for it. That was the narrative going around. The fans didn't have. They're like 10 Snyder Bros who just bullied Warner Bros and anybody who would dare dissent. That's what they did. They outright bullied until they got their way for this. In a boneheaded move, Warner Bros somehow consented to this, lost a ton more money on paying Snyder to go reshoot a bunch of junk, had the Snyder cut made, and the narrative that got picked up was, it's the triumph for the fans, guys. This is a victory for the fans because we told the studio what we wanted. And then suddenly you had a lot of YouTubers who never would have defended this garbage before suddenly start saying, guys, look, it's a good movie. Hey, if you just watch it, if you just take it, just do it. Don't think about it. Just enjoy it and just kind of accept this and that. It's actually really good. You don't have to just accept, just take this, just do this. If it's really good, it's going to be really good. You don't have to condition yourself or prepare yourself to experience the goodness of something. But yeah, there's that idea that, well, our views have evolved. I don't watch kiddie stories anymore where the hero always wins. I've grown and evolved. No, you've devolved, like you said there. What was your name? Who did the last super chat? Slider. Studio Super. Yeah. Studio Super. So good. Good point. Andre Hernandez for $5. Thoughts on Superman Earth 1 by JMS and DC's other Earth 1 stories. I've only read Superman Earth 1. And Superman Earth 1 is a well-done story. You can see that Snyder took a lot from that, or Goyer took a lot from that, or whatever, when making Man of Steel, but they didn't take... They took all of the darker, edgier parts of that universe without actually taking Superman. That's the problem. And it was fine as an Earth 1 because the Earth 1 label tells you this is not main continuity. It's kind of a what if. It's kind of an Elseworlds, but it's an Earth 1, like a pocket continuity over here that we can maybe tell some stories in if we like what it's doing, but it's not really controlling or affecting what really happens to Superman in the main mindset or whatever. So that was fine to go a little darker with this or that or whatever, but it was still truly Superman. The Clark Kent in the Earth 1 Superman was still true blue Superman. He was responding to darker circumstances than you would normally tell with Superman in a real Superman story, kind of main continuity story. But it was fine. It was good. Art was wonderful. I thought the art was pretty good. I mean, wonderful is a strong word. There were some panels where the proportions were a little honky, but the character designs were cool, whatever. It showed that you can very much update the trunks and the classic suit without losing the trunks or any elements that should be there of the classic suit. You can very much update them or whatever with it, definitely. Earth 1's basically DC's Ultimate line. Yeah, that. So I thought it was good. It was kind of like, but you could see, it was funny. You could see that they took everything from that comic except for the real Superman from that comic. They just made up their own Nolan-esque emo wanderer, nihilist Hamlet. Emo Hamlet is what I call him, because he knows he should do a thing and never does it until it's too late and everybody's dead for it. Yeah. Matthew Flynn, $2. Thank you very much. £2. Sorry. Thank you very much. Have you watched Sonic the Hedgehog 2? I've yet to see Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I want to because I really enjoyed the first movie. But yeah, it's one thing I've yet to watch. Soundagraver I know was wanting to watch it too, but yeah, I'll get around to that someday. Did you like it? Yeah, let me know if you liked it. I've heard kind of mixed things about it. I've heard some people say they didn't like it quite as much as the first one, but I don't know. Soundagraver says, yeah, we are not more mature with the new stuff. Yeah, there's also that sort of, and this is foundational to a progressive ideological mindset. I mean, it's in the very name progressive, that we're making progress, guys. So the newest thing is the best thing. The newest way of thinking about this issue is the most evolved way. Well, no, not necessarily. We have devolved in a lot of ways. The latest thing is far from the most progressed or whatever, and that's certainly the case when it comes to stories and in films and whether it's themes or treatments of characters or whatever. Definitely. Studio Super, thank you very much. $9.99 super chat. Thank you, sir. So I try to be more honest in my criticisms. Example: Puss in Boots 2 has the same problem with Puss, the Last Pirates movie. Oh, it has the same problem with Puss, the main character, as the last Pirates movie had with Jack. It doesn't feel like the same character from previous films. Interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen either of those, actually. I missed the last Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I want to watch it just to finish them all out because I love Jack Sparrow and Johnny Depp's treatment there. But yeah, I can imagine. I can understand how maybe him as a little older or whatever might not feel like the same swashbuckling character. And yeah, maybe that's the case with Puss in Boots too. Um, People were saying that it's a good movie, but see, here's the thing. A lot of people's criteria for it being good these days is it's a new film and it didn't have any woke stuff in it. That doesn't make a good film, guys. That makes at least it's something without the current ideologies being forced down your throat through it. But that doesn't make it a good film in any way. And people are losing that. You know, Hollywood is losing the ability to just construct good stories. I mean, you know, not altogether. Of course, you can still get a good story here and there, but they are losing the ability because they're not requiring it. They're not holding up the standards anymore. When I grade papers and do schoolwork or lesson planning and stuff like that, I sometimes like to have something kind of light on in the background that doesn't require me to follow too much of a story. Like I couldn't watch a movie while I was, you know, grading papers or something like that. But I like throwing on sitcoms or something like that. And I started watching the other day. I was telling Centigrade I started watching Cheers. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed Cheers growing up because it was just always there. I was born in '79, and Cheers came on in I think '83, and it lasted for like 11 years. So Cheers was just like, and you know, we were in a rural area where like NBC was pretty much all we had. So Cheers was just like a weekly staple presence, you know, of my childhood if you got the TV on at the time. And so I was like, oh, that kind of feels familiar. Well, let me start watching those, and I just have them on the background. And I'm so struck by the how much better it's written than current day sitcoms, or even sitcoms within the last 10 years or so. We've lost that ability. Part of it's the audience has lost the attention span or the emotional awareness and emotional stamina to be able to deal with difficult scenes. But you think about Cheers, for example, it's basically one set. It's not a bunch of interesting visuals and cuts and all that kind of stuff happening every now and then. It's almost more like a play. And people enter from stage right or stage left, and things happen here and things go on here. And a person today would never be able to watch that show and even be remotely interested because it doesn't have enough dangling little, you know, feathers in front of their face to keep their attention span going. But it's really well written. It's actually, I mean, it's funny. It's like laugh out loud funny. It pulls you into emotions. You're actually invested in this and that, and in a tense scene. I mean, it really can do that with good pacing. It really can move from funny to like a good tense moment, you know. And you look at the progression of sitcoms, we kind of lost that. I still do like sitcoms made in the 2000s, you know, especially the early 2000s. I still do like those sitcoms. I love My Name Is Earl. It's hilarious, so hilarious. But you wouldn't see the same kind of ability to kind of go a little bit more dramatic in a show like that. And maybe that show just doesn't want to, and that's fine. It makes me laugh hilariously. But Scrubs is another show, very funny. If you remember Scrubs, very funny. But Scrubs, even while I was watching it back in the day, and I couldn't quite articulate why, and I know now, it always had these really weird tonal shifts at the end of the episode in which they play like a pop song and do like a montage and oh, because we're all sad because so and so got an illness or whatever, you know. And it was just so abrupt. It was like the whole part of the episode, the whole main episode is laughs and funny, and they might be setting up something fine, but then towards the end, it's like, and now everybody be sad and listen to this pop song and watch this little you know, montage about it. And it was just such a tonal abrupt shift because it wasn't, the writers didn't really work it in more subtly and more gradual and transition to it well. And that's not a pan against Scrubs. I really like Scrubs. I'm just saying that's one thing where you see that era of shows didn't quite do well enough what you saw like 10 or 20 years ago, people doing quite well. I think there's some examples from that topic that I wanted to bring up. I learn about in pacing anyway. It's one thing that audiences can't do these days. I'll kind of wrap up with this because it's getting a little long, and I'm about ready to crash here. But a lot of audiences can't. People don't know how to feel their feelings anymore. And I don't mean that in any kind of hippie, you know, give me a flower kind of way. I mean that story is there to inspire, but also to help you work through emotions and catharsis and whatnot. I always think this is a good example, and bear with me if you are really anti against the Lone Ranger movie that came out in 2013 because you wanted what's his name from the 50 shows and it didn't give you that. I get it. I get it. It's fine. But bear with me here because I will say that I love the Lone Ranger film from 2013. It's very well written, very well directed, very well paced. And again, if you don't like the based on the foundation of that portrayal of Lone Ranger, fine. But I think it's funny that came out the same year Man of Steel did, because what was one of the problems that a lot of reviewers were saying about Man of Steel immediately is it just doesn't give you time to breathe. Now you're on Krypton. Now, oh, Zod's, now things are going bad. Now so and so dies. Now the planet explodes. Oh no, now you're on Earth. Now Clark's on a fishing boat and it's on fire. And oh no, and now you're over here. And like the only reprieve you got from disaster was maybe a little time to really be sad about the disaster. And that's it. I mean, no good pacing in a story. Juxtapose that with something like The Lone Ranger came out the same year. And there's that wonderful scene in the canyon with the shootout. And it's a heavy scene. And the things, and I'll try not to spoil it because I know Sound Engraver is going to watch it with me one day. The things that happen between Cavendish and Reed there it's a dark scene. What Cavendish does there, and this is a Disney movie for crying out loud. It's a really dark scene. A lot of people die. And after that happens, the camera lets you sit with that for a moment. It gives it the gravity that moment deserves. It lets it process. The camera kind of pans over the bodies in the sand for a while, and it lets you just sit with that and lets you feel, man, that's really awful. It lets you sit with that. And then eventually Tonto comes in and you see things, and it's not like Tonto comes in and just snaps a joke. No, it transitions, and then it picks back up a little bit, and then eventually it's got you laughing again, and then some heavy things happen again. It's well paced. That's an example of good pacing, just emotionally through a film. You can't have that today because people can't. The best example that I give is, and I've given this before on my channel, but Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok there's still a lot of good things in the movie that I like because Taika Waititi didn't write it. He came in and directed it and tried to push a lot of his nonsense. Love and Thunder was him from the beginning, from the script up. And that shows you just what a garbage storyteller / director he is. But even in Ragnarok, I liked some of the ideas of the things that happened. He just didn't execute them very well. But at the end of that movie, when the Asgardians are on the ship and they're watching their homeworld destroyed, they're watching this battle and they're watching their homeworld destroyed. That's a heavy moment. Give them a second. Let that breathe. That's heavy. And just for maybe a split second, the camera shows their faces, and then big dumb rock guy has to make a stupid joke because Taika Waititi can't let anybody feel feeling. Heaven forbid, he's got to jump in with a cigar and go ha cha cha. It's bad writing. It's poor human development. I mean, it's awful. It's just so awful. Pace your stories well. Good emotional pacing is vitally important. Even if audiences today can't handle it anymore, you start putting out the stories that makes them handle it, they will. I just grieve for the younger generation. And I know that there are exceptions, of course. If some of you are younger, some of my students are really quite, adept and able to watch these things. But just in overall, in general, I mean, each generation just gets worse and worse at this. And what does that do for you psychologically? If you can't think because you never learned to write and you don't practice that, so you really can't think clearly, you can't process any of your feelings because you want to run to your phone or run to your, whatever. You can't even watch a movie because that's too long. TV shows, let me just scroll through some TikTok videos because they're only like 15 seconds, whatever. You're not able to think clearly. You're not able to process emotions clearly. Heaven help you. You are heading for the psych ward. and a lot of the young people today are. They don't realize it yet, but man, they are. They're going to have mental breakdowns, earlier and earlier in life. And it's going to be ugly. And it's because we've let our culture, we let our art go. And it hasn't conditioned them and prepared them and trained them and inspired them the way it should. All right. I am about out of steam. Yeah, I love the John Carter movie, Spidey Rules. I think that was really, really well done. It was horribly marketed, and so it's no wonder that it really didn't take off. But it was good. It was a well done film. I like that. And I've read the John Carter Princess of Mars novels. They're quite good. I mean, I like the stories. He's not the best writer, prose stylist, but he's got some great storytelling ideas, and I thought the movie was good. So let me remember before I forget here. I see Sound Engraver saying she's streaming tomorrow at 5 p.m. So she's normally she's been doing it on Mondays, but tomorrow she's going to do it at 5 p.m. Monday because I think she's working. I mean, sorry, she's doing it tomorrow, 5 p.m. Sunday, because this Monday she's working. So her stream is going to be Sunday night instead of Monday. I do appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Again, I know it's not one of the hot button topics. If I'd have put if I'd have trash talked Brie Larson or said reviewing Shazam 2 or whatever, we'd have 120 people in here as usual. But I don't like being insincere. I don't have anything to say about that, so I'm not going to manufacture something, just to get some clicks. But I very much do appreciate those of you who are here and have watched. I certainly appreciate all of you who super chatted. But even if you couldn't super chat, just being here helps. Being here, giving it another view, giving it another thumbs up or whatever is very, very helpful. So I appreciate that. You are funding Sound Engraver and I's wedding. We'll drop some pictures of it for sure. We'll share some of those. But it's coming together nicely. October, come in this October. So got the rest of the summer to keep saving, keep paying, and keep bleeding us dry for that. So thank you guys. Sorry, hit the mic there. Good hanging out with you tonight. And until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the true blue, well-told hero stories you love. Thanks for watching.